This is Blade. He was released a year ago in version 1.2, but he was initially designed way before that since he was playable in Star Rail's second closed beta test in mid-2022. I don't think Blade is as bad as how some people talk about him, but it is true that he can't exactly do this, or this, or this. It is a product of Blade's design being a bit outdated by now, but it also comes from a lack of specialized support units that he can make use of. I mean, when you look at Firefly, she's great, but is largely enabled by Harmony Trailblazer and Ruan Mei, who provide virtually everything Firefly would ever want in teammates. In a previous video, I theorized how I would directly buff an underperforming character by changing their kit. So let's do a different exercise this time and try to create the perfect support for the current iteration of Blade that can make him meta again. The goal is to make a support that is strong with Blade but doesn't help the teams that are already meta, so we need to target the aspects that make Blade unique. Reviewing his kit, his talent gives him an AoE follow-up attack that is triggered after consuming his HP or taking damage 5 times. Because it only makes up a portion of his overall damage output, it's not quite enough to make him competitive with other dedicated follow-up characters on follow-up teams, but letting him charge it up faster would definitely help. It also heals him as a way to counteract his HP consumption on his skill and the enhanced basic attacks his skill enables. This is definitely going to be a central point in designing a support for him, since only him, Firefly, and Arlon are capable of consuming their own HP, though Jingliu and Jade are able to do so on allies. Blade's ultimate always sets his HP to 50%, which can reduce his health or be used to heal up. Giving him a way to have his ultimate up a lot more often should go a long way for him, as it could be used to either expedite his follow-up stack generation, or can be used as a way to recover health if he gets a bit too low. As for skill points, Blade uses 1 to activate his skill before using none on his enhanced basics for a few turns, so he has the flexibility to have a more skill spammy support. The last unique aspect that Blade has is his stat scaling, as all 3 of his attacks scale primarily with his own max HP. There are a couple healers, Lynx and Bailu, that can increase ally max HP for better general survivability, but these would also give Blade the equivalent of giving other characters attack buffs. He does also have minor scaling with his attack, which makes the stats he gets from stuff like light cones and relics non-trivial, but that shouldn't matter for our support. Providing crit stats should be something to consider as well though, as Blade likes it while Break and DOT teams can't use it. With this, I think we have enough info to start building our new supports. I actually ended up with 2 ideas for characters, and the way things worked out, the first concept definitely feels reasonable for a 4-star, with the second for sure being 5-star material. Now this will be a lot easier if our hypothetical characters have names we can refer to them by, so if they're gonna make cool designs like this and not make them into characters, I'm just gonna borrow their names. I'm gonna start first with the 4-star since it's simpler. Let's say Dubra is our 4-star abundance healer. So I mentioned Blade has so many ways to adjust his HP, and because of that, Dubra's talent will be that she gains energy whenever allies gain or lose HP. Just to note, I won't be putting in specific numbers for the most part, since we don't really need to focus on the details when talking about overall design concepts. So this talent of course synergizes with every single one of Blade's actions. And to ensure this energy generation is used well, I'm gonna let Dubra's ult have up to 2 charges, and give it an effect you might want to use multiple times in a row, just like the other characters that share this property. I'm thinking it will allow all allies to resist the next oncoming crowd control debuff for the next few turns. That way, if you resist one and want to have the resist up again, you can use her ult the second time to refresh it. But that would be pretty situational if it was the only effect, so I want to give it a small resistance penetration buff to all allies for the same duration. I know an offensive buff with a high uptime like this seems a bit out of character for a healer, but this stat is pretty much exclusive to Ruan Mei, and I think more support should be able to give it. In exchange, Dubra's healing will be much less consistent than other abundance characters. We'll see that in her skill, which you'll be able to tell right away takes quite a bit of inspiration from Jade. Dubra marks a single target ally with a special DOT for 3 turns, while also providing an AoE heal that scales with her own max HP. The DOT always consumes 2% of the marked ally's max HP at the start of their turn, in exchange for energy regeneration. Dubra's Ascension 4 trace lets it also proc whenever the marked ally attacks. All this makes it so that the target ally, who of course would ideally be Blade, frequently generates extra follow-up stacks and bonus energy. Dubra's technique helps her start the battle easier by making her first skill cost no skill points. Her last Ascension trace increases the target probability of a marked destruction or preservation ally. Overall, this helps defer damage to an ally that can tank it, but of course for the Blade agenda, this is to ensure he gets all the stacks from receiving hits. To make this a bit more usable for characters that aren't Blade, we'll include some damage reduction in there as an ascension trace. And since this is a 4-star, they are generally expected to have some eidolons, so I added them in without much thought. Just like most eidolons, there's some stat buffs thrown around for the sake of increasing usability. And with that, we have our character. Overall, she is designed as an abundance character with weaker overall healing, but strong utility as a high uptime damage buffer and consistent debuff preventer. She works perfectly with Blade by giving him tons of stacks on his follow-up and constant energy regeneration, both of which offsets her low frequency healing by letting him heal himself. But this pairing gets even stronger when put on a team with the second character I've designed. My next concept is a lot crazier, definitely entering 5-star design territory, and for that reason we'll use Constance as our stand-in because she looks like she is crazy. The central idea behind this kit is the idea of high risk in exchange for high reward. From the start, I knew I wanted to design a support with no energy, similar to Acheron and Fei Xiao. So what's the condition? Her talent dictates that she can use her ultimate when there's an ally on the field that has 30% or less health, and her ult is a pretty strong one too, giving all allies a bunch of extra speed for one turn. She can also use this in combination with the Dance 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 light cone, so it might be a little too broken, but it's fine. So you get an incredibly strong buff to your team at the cost of one of them needing to actively be at the risk of dying. What about using shields to stay at low health while reaping all the benefits? Well, shields stop Blade from getting follow-up stacks after getting hit since his HP doesn't drop, and the agenda must be maintained, so I slapped on a condition that the ult won't work if anyone has a shield. I guess this is how the designers felt when they created Acheron. Now, since the ultimate isn't consuming stacks, that means the condition will stay true after ulting, so there is the stipulation that it can only be activated once per turn in order to stop infinite dancing. While this ultimate is already very strong, it could also use a little bit more sauce, so it also increases the max HP of all allies. Of course, this is a not so subtle way to give Blade more damage, but it also synergizes very well with her ultimate condition by allowing units to hit that 30% HP threshold while still having more health remaining. This will come into play immediately because Constance's technique will make her ultimate trigger at the start of battle. Blade pairs perfectly with his ultimate condition since his technique plus skill and attack leaves him at 40%, but what about the last 10% or using other characters who don't have HP consumption? That's where the other half of Constance's talent comes into play. If you thought the ultimate was unorthodox, this is where it really gets interesting. Constance's basic attack can only be directed at allies and consumes a percentage of their max HP. This is important because her basic attack also has 3 levels of enhancement with her skill, and this is how she grants her offensive buffs. Think of it like Dong Hung Il, but instead you're attacking your allies while also buffing them. So at no enhancement she consumes 5% max HP and restores a skill point. Enhancing will only cost at most a single skill point, but does take more HP. It starts with a crit rate buff at 10%, then an additional crit damage buff at 20%, and finally an additional damage dealt buff at 30% total HP consumed, lasting for 2 turns. The buffs also need to scale with Constance's own stats, so that like most other Harmony units, she can't afford to build defensive stats. I picked crit rate kind of arbitrarily because no support scales with it yet. The crit to crit scaling makes sense, but the damage buff will have to fit in an Ascension passive because that's how most other characters usually have it. So not only does this enhanced basic let you lower an ally's health for ultimate and grand buffs, but you get to direct energy towards them thanks to her Ascension 2 trace, which immediately regenerates energy to allies that consume HP or have their HP consumed. Of course, Constance can't make use of this on herself, but it would battery a lot for Blade, Jingliu, and Jade. And for her final Ascension trace, I decided to give a bit of a cushion for having an ally be on critically low health by having it so that Abundance Path allies are action advanced by 100% and given the opportunity to use their skill for no cost. If you choose not to heal, it guarantees you can have Constance's ultimate again on the next turn, but your ally could die. You have to make the choice, which can be seen as skill based for you to have to evaluate if you're safe or not. So here's the full details of this hypothetical kit, and to summarize the design, she is a Harmony character that focuses on enabling allies who have HP consuming abilities by giving them constant damage, speed, and energy buffs. Her ultimate that can speed up all allies is enabled by teammates who can maintain low amounts of HP, but there is always an element of risk when at that state. Her skill allows teammates to reach that lower threshold faster while providing her buffs to them. Compared to other Harmony supports, she provides less upfront damage, needs to use skill points more frequently, especially if you have 2 carries, has no built-in effect resistance, and might give you mental strain, but works amazingly with HP consuming characters and grants huge amounts of extra turns through increased speed. Blade helps enable her ultimate with his own health consumption, while having strong survivability tools to maintain a low but relatively safe state. I think this team is looking pretty meta, if it were real that is. Now I'm gonna say it before one of you guys do in the comments, but even though I put a lot of thought into them, these kits definitely have some flaws. These designs of course would only be the initial ones to start testing with, and I'd for sure be making tons of changes if I could actually play them. I honestly kinda forgot about the overlap in energy recharging between the 2 characters until I started recording the voiceover, but I guess they do function quite a bit differently. I wrote up both of these supports with only Blade in mind, so it's more of a coincidence that they both support Jingliu Great 2, who many players are also sad to see fall out of the meta. Though I guess that just is a testament to how much HP consumption can thrive as a distinct archetype if given more units. Making this video has given me an even greater appreciation for the developers who have to design and balance kits like this, especially since they inevitably get criticized when things don't pan out. It's me, I'm the one that criticizes them. Still though, I think it's really fun to theorize in what kind of ways Star Rail's gameplay will evolve, because what we have now has become way more crazy than what the base roster was capable of. Overall, I'd say my experiment to try and make supports that would buff Blade was successful, largely thanks to him having tons of unique properties to take advantage of. Maybe Hoyoverse won't buff him the way I thought of, but if they feel so inclined to, they can definitely make something work for him. I hope you found this video to be interesting or insightful. Subscribe for more Honkai Star Rail discussion videos. And as always, thanks for watching.